In the heart of Europe, Swami Vivekananda's journey takes a new turn, revealing deeper connections, personal reflections, and a vision that bridges continents. Witness how his stay in Switzerland and Germany, along with profound encounters, shapes his plans for a lasting legacy. Welcome back to our exploration of Swami Vivekananda's life. In today's episode, we delve into his cherished relationships with devoted followers, his inspirational travels across Europe, and his strategic plans for advancing his spiritual mission. From the serene Alps to engaging dialogues with European scholars, join us as we uncover how Vivekananda's vision for a global spiritual movement began to crystallize. A very affectionate relationship sprang up between the Swami and the Savias, and the latter regarded him as their son. They became his intimate companions and offered him all their savings. But the Swami, anxious about their future worldly security, persuaded them to keep the greater portion of their fortune. Captain and Mrs. Sevier, together with Miss Noble and Goodwin, were the choicest among the followers that Swami Vivekananda gathered in England, and all of them remained faithful to him and his work till the last days of their lives. Through the generosity of the Seviers, the Swami, as will be seen, established the Advaita Ashrama at Mayavati, an almost inaccessible place in the Himalayas, for the training of the disciples, both Eastern and Western, in the contemplation of the impersonal Godhead. After Captain Sevier's death at Mayavati, Mrs. Sevier lived there for 15 years, busying herself with the education of the children of the neighboring hills. Once Miss MacLeod asked her, "Do you not get bored?" "I think of him," she replied, referring to Swami Vivekananda. Though preoccupied with various activities in England, the Swami never for one moment forgot his work in India. After all, it was his intense desire to find means to ameliorate the condition of his countrymen that had brought him to the West. That hope he always cherished in a corner of his mind, both in Europe and in America. He had to train his brother disciples as future workers in India, and so he is seen writing to them in detail regarding the organization of the monastery at Alambazar, where they had been living for some time. On April 27, 1896, he sent instructions about the daily life of the monks, their food and clothing, their intercourse with the public, and about the provision of a spacious library at the monastery, a smaller room for interviews, a big hall for religious discussions with the devotees, a small room for an office, another for smoking, and so forth and so on. He advised them to furnish the rooms in the simplest manner and to keep an eye on the water for drinking and cooking. The monastery, he suggested, should be under the management of a president and a secretary to be elected by turns by vote. Study, preaching, and religious practices should be important items among the duties of the inmates. He also desired to establish a mutt for women directly under the control of the Holy Mother. The monks were not to visit the women's quarters. In conclusion, he recommended Swami Brahmananda as the first president of the mutt and said, "He who is the servant of all is their true master. He never becomes a leader in whose love there is a consideration of high or low. He whose love knows no end and never stops to consider high or low has the whole world lying at his feet." For his workers, the Swami wanted men with muscles of iron and nerves of steel, inside which dwells a mind of the same material as that of which the thunderbolt is made. To quote the Swami's words again, "I want strength, manhood, kshatravirya, or the virility of a warrior, and brahma teja, or the radiance of a Brahmin. These men will stand aside from the world, give their lives, and be ready to fight the battle of truth, marching on from country to country. One blow struck outside of India is equal to 100,000 struck within. Well, all will come if the Lord wills it." The Swami was exhausted by his strenuous work in England. 3 of his intimate disciples, the Seviers and Henrietta Muller, proposed a holiday tour on the continent. He was as delighted as a child at the prospect. "Oh, I long to see the snows and wander on the mountain paths," he said. He recalled his travels in the Himalayas. On July 31, 1896, the Swami, in the company of his friends, left for Switzerland. They visited Geneva, Mer de Glace, Montreux, Chillon, Chamonix, the St. Bernard, Lucerne, the Rigi, Zermatt, and Schaffhausen. The Swami felt exhilarated by his walks in the Alps. He wanted to climb Mont Blanc, but gave up the idea when told of the difficulty of the ascent. He found that Swiss peasant life and its manners and customs resembled those of the people who dwelt in the Himalayas. In a little village at the foot of the Alps between Mont Blanc and the Little St. Bernard, he conceived the idea of founding a monastery in the Himalayas. He said to his companions, "Oh, I long for a monastery in the Himalayas where I can retire from the labors of my life and spend the rest of my days in meditation. It will be a center for work and meditation where my Indian and Western disciples can live together, and I shall train them as workers. The former will go out as preachers of Vedanta to the West, and the latter will devote their lives to the good of India." Mr. Sevier, speaking for himself and his wife, said, "How nice it would be, Swami, if this could be done. We must have such a monastery." The dream was fulfilled through the Advaita Ashrama at Mayavati, which commands a magnificent view of the eternal snows of the Himalayas. In the Alps, the Swami enjoyed some of the most lucid and radiant moments of his spiritual life. Sometimes he would walk alone, absorbed in thought, the disciples keeping themselves at a discreet distance. One of the disciples said, "There seemed to be a great light about him, and a great stillness and peace. Never have I seen the Swami to such advantage. He seemed to communicate spirituality by a look or with a touch. One could almost read his thoughts, which were of the highest, so transfigured had his personality become." While still wandering in the Alps, the Swami received a letter from the famous Orientalist Paul Deussen, professor of philosophy at the University of Kiel. The professor urgently invited the Swami to visit him. The Swami accepted the invitation and changed his itinerary. He arrived at Kiel after visiting Heidelberg, Koblenz, Cologne, and Berlin. He was impressed by the material power and the great culture of Germany. Professor Deussen was well versed in Sanskrit and was perhaps the only scholar in Europe who could speak that language fluently. A disciple of Schopenhauer and follower of Kant, Deussen could easily appreciate the high flights of Shankaracharya's philosophy. He believed that the system of Vedanta, as founded on the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutras, is one of the most majestic structures and valuable products of the genius of man in his search for truth, and that the highest and purest morality is the immediate consequence of Vedanta. The Swami and the Seviers were cordially received by the German scholar. In the course of the conversation, Deussen said that a movement was being made back towards the fountainhead of spirituality, a movement that would in the future probably make India the spiritual leader of the nations, the highest and the greatest spiritual influence on earth. He also found in the Swami a vivid demonstration of concentration and control of the mind. On one occasion, he saw his guest turning over the pages of a poetical work and did not receive any response to a query. Afterwards, the Swami apologized, saying that he had been so absorbed in the book that he did not hear the professor. Then he repeated the verses from the book. The conversation soon turned to the power of concentration as developed in the yoga philosophy. One of the purposes of Deussen's meeting the Swami, it is said, was his desire to learn from the latter the secrets of the yoga powers. Deussen showed the Swami the city of Kiel. Thereafter, the Swami wished to leave immediately for England, though the professor insisted that he should stay at Kiel a few days more. As that was not possible, Deussen joined the party in Hamburg and they travelled together in Holland. After spending 3 days in Amsterdam, all arrived in London, and for 2 weeks, Deussen met with the Swami daily. The Swami also visited Max Muller again at Oxford. Swami Vivekananda spent another 2 months in England, giving lectures and seeing important men of their day, such as Edward Carpenter, Frederick Myers, Canon Wilberforce, and Moncure D. Conway. The most notable lectures he gave at this time were those on Maya, about which he spoke on 3 occasions, dealing with its various aspects. It is said that some members of the British royal family attended these lectures incognito. He created such an intense atmosphere during these talks that the whole audience was transported into a realm of ecstatic consciousness, and some burst into tears. The lectures were the most learned and eloquent among his speeches on non-dualistic Vedanta. Swami Abhedananda arrived from India, and Vivekananda was immensely pleased to have his brother disciple assist him in his foreign work. The maiden speech of Abhedananda at a club in Bloomsbury Square on October 27 was highly appreciated by all, and the Swami said about his spiritual brother, "Even if I perish on this plane, my message will be sounded through these dear lips, and the world will hear it." The report of the continued popularity of Swami Sharadananda, who had in the meantime gone to New York, likewise gratified him. In our next episode, we shift our focus to Swami Vivekananda's personal connections and the heartfelt advice he offered to his American followers. Join us as we witness the final chapters of his European sojourn, leading up to his anticipated return to India, and the impactful moments that defined his departure. Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.